some breaking news on the Chicago City budget. It could be short nearly $1 billion. We just learned that's the shortfall Mayor Brandon Johnson is projecting for the 2025 budget.
And that means the city will need to make some tough financial decisions.
A nearly $1 billion shortfall. That's what the city of Chicago is facing for their 2025 budget. Mayor Brandon Johnson saying the city needs to find $982 million.
So the city of Chicago is facing a $1 billion budget deficit, and it's all because of the migrant crisis. Let's talk about it. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. See, we have two political parties here in the United States. We have the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, when it comes to the southern border, Democrats are let everyone come in and we can take care of the world. So, you know the story. Chicago, New York, and other left-wing cities claimed that they wanted migrants to come there. They wanted open borders and claimed that migrants were welcome, no matter where they came from. Here is the Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson explaining how migrants are welcome in the city and they can handle it.
We know the strength of a city is determined by how we treat the most vulnerable. And so we choose to be a strong city. We must reject a zero-sum formulation between investing in those who have been here for decades and supporting those who have been sit here on a bus even this morning. We can do both, Chicago, and we can all thrive together.
Now, the same message was coming from other liberal states, like New York, where the governor essentially begged migrants to come to New York.
We want people to come here, despite where they came from or despite the circumstances that drove them to this country and to this state. We say you are welcome here. We are welcome with open arms, and we'll work to keep you safe. We'll not only house you, but we'll protect you. And the richness of the culture and the diversity and the food and the restaurants that we know are going to be coming because of these efforts are beyond measure. It's an extraordinary part of our story. And it's woven into the story of New York, and it makes us more vibrant.
Now, this virtue signaling was great for politics. And since almost no migrants were coming to New York and Chicago, but were all staying at the southern border, then they could call the Republicans racist, and they could deny that stricter border policy was necessary. There were no consequences. But the governors in those border states came up with a solution. If cities like Chicago and New York wanted illegal immigrants, then let's send them there. This was a win-win. Those cities get the migrants, and they also get the problem that come with those migrants.
Local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden administration. Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants who have been dropped off by the Biden administration to Washington, D.C. We are sending them to the United States Capitol, where the Biden administration will be able to more immediately address the needs of the people that they are allowing to come across our border.
If you remember, going back as far as April, Texas Governor Greg Abbott had announced his plans to bus migrants from the Lone Star State, basically also what we've seen from the state of Arizona, to parts of the Northeast, Washington, and as of this Friday, here in New York City. And he said that that would be offered on a voluntary basis. Only those migrants that have already been processed by the Department of Homeland Security who want to board these buses for a ride to the Northeast. A representative from the governor saying that these migrants willingly chose to go to New York City, having signed a voluntary consent waiver available in multiple languages upon boarding, that they agreed on the destination.
Now, after the migrants started hitting the Democratic cities, things all went to hell. Why? Well, that's because there wasn't enough money to pay for all this stuff. And now all those Democratic cities with open arms started declaring states of emergency because they had a migrant crisis.
Governor Healy just declared a state of emergency in Massachusetts because of the number of migrants arriving in Massachusetts. Healy says they are overwhelming local shelters.
Here in Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot just issued an emergency declaration in response to the surge of migrants being bused to the city by Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
The New York City Mayor Eric Adams declaring a state of emergency over the ever-escalating number of asylum seekers coming to the city. The mayor says the shelter system is overwhelmed and that after today, the city will set a new record for the highest number of people ever in the system.
Now that brings us back to the city of Chicago, where Mayor Brandon Johnson was opening up the checkbooks and said, we're going to spend, baby, spend, because we are a sanctuary city and we're going to pay for migrants to live here in style.
At 4:30, new money for migrants may be on the way.
Mayor Brandon Johnson is asking the city council for an additional $70 million to support asylum seekers. CBS 2's Sabrina Franza just left City Hall and is in the newsroom now. Sabrina, the meeting is still going on.
Jim Murray City Council is still debating whether or not they might approve a $70 million increase in migrant spending. Some alders asking why this might be taking from the city's rainy day fund, questioning whether or not the city should spend more on this mission at all. Now, the money the mayor is asking for is part of the original spending plan that Governor Pritzker's office says was discussed back in February, when Governor Pritzker and Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle announced they would invest a combined $250 million to help fund the migrant mission, which they say, along with the Johnson administration, anticipated would cost $321 million for shelter and services this calendar year. The mayor was asked about reports that he had committed an additional $70 million to complete that $321 million estimated cost. And at the time, he denied that. Now we're told the $70 million discussed today is in fact what the mayor discussed in February. City Council was split on the issue, asking if the Johnson administration planned on coming back to council to ask for additional funds after this $70 million they're asking for now might run out.
Now, do you want to learn a new language? Well, the best way to do it is to uproot your entire life, drop yourself in the middle of a new country, and figure it out from there. But if you're not ready to do that, you can still learn a new language the next best way. That's with Babbel. Speak like a whole new you with Babbel. It's a science-backed language learning app that gets you talking. Babbel's 10-minute lessons are quick, handcrafted by over 200 language experts, and ready to get you speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. With real-life tips and tools focused on conversation, Babbel gets you talking and keeps you talking wherever you go. And here's another cool part. Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you improve your pronunciation and accent. So you're not just learning words, you're learning how they sound and how to sound like a local. Now, don't just take my word for it. Studies from Yale and Michigan State University prove that Babbel works. Plus, with over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's got the track record to back it up. So here's a special deal for my listeners. Get up to 60% off of your Babbel subscription, but only at babbel.com/Nate. That's BABBEL.com/Nate. Rules and restrictions may apply. Now, the mayor of Chicago spending like crazy, putting migrants up in shelters and hotels. Things were going great. But what's the problem? They didn't have the money. Now they're facing a $1 billion budget deficit because they overspent on migrants.
And tonight there is a bleak forecast when it comes to Chicago's finances. Mayor Brandon Johnson says the city's budget gap will grow to nearly $1 billion next year. And now some aldermen say it's time to think about raising property taxes. Christian Farr breaks down what's at stake.
This is not just a challenge. This is a fiscal crisis.
Some Chicago City Council members are not happy with Mayor Johnson's recent budget preview that puts the city in a major financial deficit.
I don't think we have a lot of solutions on the table when you have an administration that is pretty much moving more in the expenditure side of things than they are on reducing expenses.
So now you think Mayor Brandon Johnson, he's got $1 billion deficit he needs to close. What does he do? He says, well, I still want to spend $150 million on migrants.
There are a litany or plethora amount of options that are on the table that my administration will be exploring collectively.
The mayor's team is budgeting $150 million for migrant care, the same as last year, despite the significant drop-off in the number of people being bused to Chicago.
I don't think my constituents like that when they're talking about money for whether it's a new field house, whether I got a senior who can't get a roof and porch.
Now, I don't want to sound like I'm cold-hearted, that I don't want to help people from other countries who need help and come to the United States and to get that help. But I think we have to be reasonable with these policies. We can't just take care of everybody. We can't afford it. The reason why we have these processes in place is so the people who we can bring in, we can take care of, and they don't have to live on the streets, and they don't have to live in tents in sub-zero temperatures in Chicago. Now, the mayor, for his part, he is stressing this thing out tremendously. Now, the situation has gotten so bad that the mayor of Chicago started having panic attacks and had to be hospitalized. Here is what the reporter said happened.
As we sit here and tape this, it's getting cold and snowy in Chicago, and Brandon Johnson has got his hands full to deal with that. But you've seen it. You have seen people, your community starting.
No amount of antidepressants can cure him of this problem.
No, he certainly was feeling the malaise.
I know it. It's so true. And I actually, you brought it up. I was going to bring it up, and I thought,
panic attacks. The mayor's panic attacks. Oh, can we talk about that?
Yeah. Can we talk about that? Because two sources told me that he has been in the hospital for these panic attacks, and he is stressed out. Because this is a big job for him.
He wasn't ready for it.
He's not ready for it. He is not ready for it. He's not a leader. I'm sorry. He's just not a leader.
He's not.
And, a leader, brings people up and supports them. And the Chicago police are still waiting to see where that comes from. But yeah, he put in a good superintendent. But I still think that he needs to prove himself to the police. Where does he stand on that? But this immigration issue, boy, this is not helping him at all, this situation. And, when you call yourself a sanctuary city, you call yourself a sanctuary state, guess what's going to happen? Don't blame Texas, because Texas, if you look at what they're dealing with, they have a massive influx. We don't even show the videos on television. The amount of people that are just standing around, and now they're desperate, because what happens when people don't have money or they don't have food? They start breaking into things. They start committing crimes. They start working for the cartels. They start doing human trafficking. They start becoming victims of human trafficking. So they had to do, what are they going to do with all these people? They had to get them out of their city. And, sanctuary city, you're the welcoming city, so you're going to get what you asked for, or what you said you were.
So now, at the end of the day, all of these sanctuary cities who thought they could spin their way out of the problem now have these massive budget deficits and have to cut services. For the people, the taxpayers in those local communities, they're screwed. They're talking about raising their taxes to cover this deficit. And it's not their fault. It's not their fault that their dumb mayor wants to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on migrants who are coming here illegally because they opened their big mouth and said, we'll take care of them. Well, now you should be the one taking care of them, not the taxpayers of that community. But I gotta say this, they voted them in, so they're stuck with it. Now, tell me where I'm in the comment section. Tell me if you like this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Peace.